What's good, everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined as ever by Aidan McConaughey for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. Today is Tuesday, the 8th of November, and today we're chatting about Nets wins, which isn't, latest off the court drama, and there being no sign of a new head coach, as well as much, much more, of course. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, and check us out on YouTube where you can catch us live and watch all of our episodes. With that out of the way, let's get into it. I touched on, some nice on the court stuff that we will get to, I promise. But this being a Brooklyn Nets podcast, we're going to have to touch on the latest drama surrounding Kyrie Irving. Obviously, it's been a week since we last podcasted. Following a non-apology, Adam Silver condemning Kyrie and Nike dropping him, Irving has been suspended by the Brooklyn Nets for at least 5 games for sharing a link to a film that we covered last week. He's now been given a set of actions that he needs to take before he's welcomed back into the Nets organization. So there's 6 of them that I am going to read out, just so we're clear. So number 1 is issue an apology for posting a link to the movie on October 27th, condemn the harmful and false content and make clear that he does not have anti-Jewish beliefs. Number 2, complete the anti-hate causes that Irving, the Nets, and the Anti-Defamation League agreed upon in their joint release of November the 2nd, including a $500,000 donation towards causes and organizations that work to eradicate hate and tolerance in communities. Number 3, complete sensitivity training created by the Nets. Number 4, complete anti-Semitic/anti-hate training designed by the Nets. Number 5, meet with representatives from the Anti-Defamation League as well as Jewish community leaders in Brooklyn. And number 6, after completing 1 to 5, meet with owner Joe Tsai and lead franchise officials and demonstrate the lessons learned and the gravity of the harm caused in the situation is understood and provide assurances that this type of behavior will not be repeated. So a lot to do there to get back on the court at least. So it's, Kyrie's done for at least 5 games. He tried to he had the opportunity to say sorry in front of the media, then didn't. He has now come back with a bit more of a robust apology, I think it's fair to say. But Aidan, thrown to you. Do you think these demands are fair?
It's quite a quest, the entire start of everything he needs to do. I mean, it does feel like a quest in like a video game where you have to get a certain amount of coins, all those different things. And I mean, not sure. I like the idea that obviously they're kind of going down the education route as an alternative to just a straight out punishment. Obviously, has been punished by not getting to play for 5 games, but it does feel that it'll be more beneficial. I do feel the way that it's been portrayed to the media, so that they can obviously share these kind of step-by-step stages that Kyrie has to go through. It's slightly humiliating for Kyrie in a way. I don't really like the way that that's been done. We said last week that we didn't feel that the punishment up to the stage that it was last week, it didn't fit the crime at the time, and we felt that there was something going to happen. Obviously, it has. But it just feels a bit weird the way they've kind of came out with it. I've never seen anything quite like it, really, this kind of thing. And it doesn't tend to be done. Obviously, there's things in there that are just being done by the Nets. I don't know if potentially it's them trying to cover their backs. Obviously, their reputation is well and truly in the mud right now. There's no other way to put it. And maybe they just want to show like that they're punishing appropriately, and as far as they're aware. I mean, obviously he's came out and apologized in a statement, explained himself as to why he did this, and if you want to believe him, what he said, or if you don't want to believe him, he has came out and done that, and he's taken some sort of responsibility for it. Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's 5 games. I don't think we're going to see him anytime soon, to be honest. It just feels that 5 games was just an initial punishment. It feels like there is potentially going to be, this could go on for quite a while. It certainly doesn't feel over. I love Kyrie as a basketball player, but it's never easy. It's never this straightforward. It's never going to be a situation where he's going to go through these steps and like, oh, brilliant, there you go, Kyrie, you can get back on the court. It's never that straightforward with Kyrie Irving, and it's just getting a bit much now. It's getting to that stage now where we've had things with Kyrie in the past where we've bitten our tongue, but now it's just a stage where it's just a bit much, and you just want to get on with basketball. And I think the demands are fair, but the way it's been published is very wrong.
I think you're right. It's like, so I'm of the opinion that I don't think Kyrie holds these anti-Semitic beliefs, right? But he just did a stupid thing by sharing this hateful piece of rubbish to his feeds, and that was obviously wrong. He has come back and it took him a lot to actually sit down and apologize. Obviously, he did that weird thing where people asked him if he held anti-Semitic views, and he said, "I can't be anti-Semitic if I know where I come from." So he did that one of those things where it's like, "I'm sorry if you were offended" type apologies. But now he got battered for it, essentially. Sort of, I'm sure he got battered for it by the Nets. I'm sure he got battered for it by Adam. I'm not quite sure of the timeline, but I think his second apology, his actual apology, came after a meeting with Adam Silver. So maybe he kind of saw the severity of the stuff that he was up against, and he actually sat down and apologized. And it's one of those, because you don't want to live in a world where you make a mistake and you just, exiled from everything.
Totally.
So there's got to be a stage at which him apologizing is enough. And I think, so you can argue whether or not the actions that he's been asked to do are right or wrong. And I think, he should do all this stuff, and that's fine. But I think, to your point, it's the fact that it's just all been really, really public has just made it 10 times worse. And part of that, I think, is the media wanting to get everything they want to get out of this story, and Kyrie for clicks and all this kind of stuff that we always say. But there's also that element of, I think, the Nets and Sean Marks and Joe Tsai want to be very actively seen as really making Kyrie work for this forgiveness. And I think they want to make sure that the Nets are seen as making sure that, steps are being taken for him to understand what he's done and all that kind of stuff. So it's a real tricky one to find that balance. And I don't think it's weird, because it can be quite damaging to say, "Oh, he said sorry, leave him alone, everything's fine," and swept under the rug. But yeah, it just feels like it's been absolutely battered. And I feel like Kyrie's probably, if anyone's going to go, do you know what, sack it off then. Stop. I'm not going to sort of crawl over broken glass to get back to doing this. He's a very principled guy. He's a very proud bloke, and he's a very stubborn bloke. So I think maybe it's even designed for him to go, "No, I'm walking." I don't know, but we shall see. The one of them that I think that kind of sticks in my mind the most is option 6, where it's like, after he's done all these things, after he's issued an apology, given $500,000 towards these causes and organizations, completed sensitivity training, completed anti-Semitic and anti-hate training, met with local representatives. It's almost like Joe Tsai has inserted himself as the final boss in this sort of parade of things that he's got to, like, performative things that he's got to do to get forgiveness and to find himself back onto a court. So meet with Joe Tsai and lead franchise officials and demonstrate the lessons learned, and that the gravity of harm caused in the situation is understood, and provide assurances that his type of behavior will not be repeated. I don't know, that just feels a bit... Obviously, Joe Tsai has had a lot of negative press with him just feeling like it's kind of a bit of an ego trip for him to be put in this kind of this weird power dynamic. I remember the game, obviously we'll get to, I think it was after the Wizards game, he was like, "Let's put the fun back into basketball." And it was just like, mate, you didn't need to say that. So it's weird. So what do you think of that final action when Joe Tsai's kind of big involvement in that?
It just gets, it's just a bit of a vibe of like when someone's about to get sacked by their work and they give them that one final opportunity to almost like beg for mercy and like just plead for forgiveness. Yeah, he's Kyrie's employed at the end of the day, so I guess he is obviously Kyrie does need to prove himself to him. You can have a look at the way Tsai does his business with the Nets. Obviously, he's very much a front-facing owner. There's owners out there that you never see. You just never see these owners. Like it's obviously more common in basketball where owners are more involved with the team than perhaps other sports. And the way Tsai does his business is very much front-facing, almost parallel to Sean Marks. It's almost like they always seem to make decisions as a duo instead of kind of leaving Sean Marks to be the general manager of the team. How much he likes that, I don't know. But yeah, it has its benefits at times. The way that he does his business, obviously, it looks good probably to kind of your Nets investors that obviously your owner is so front facing and so involved, so they know what's going on. But at the same time, the way he runs to social media and not just obviously recently, we've seen it previously with the trade requests, the Kyrie vaccine stuff. It's just so embarrassing, and there's absolutely no need for it. And there's no two doubts about it that he's a fantastic businessman. Like, I mean, he's one of the richest men in the world, but you just wish he just thought about it like before he'd done these things, because what's the benefit of going on Twitter and putting something out there? It's just all negative, really. And yeah, I don't know. The whole thing just seems weird. Not even just the last one. I understand he's obviously going through. He's going to have to go through steps to be able to step in the court again. But yeah, just the whole thing just seems a bit odd. And I think you're bang on with what you said. It is almost setting him up for failure. It's almost like he needs to be absolutely perfect to be able to get back, even though he's apologized. And we do all make mistakes, as you say. This is a fairly big mistake. I mean, there's not much bigger than being anti-Semitic, but yeah, I think you're right. I think they are setting him up for failure, and it just seems that it's not finished yet.
No, and it's not going to finish any quicker with Joe Tsai just pouring petrol on the skip fire that is the Brooklyn Nets at the moment. Big up to everyone that's joined us in the YouTube chat at the moment. Oliver's come through and asked if he's missed the part where we talk about how great Cam Thomas is. And no, you've not, mate. We've got all the happy stuff to follow. We're just getting through all the stuff we have to talk about, unfortunately, as we follow this team. But moving swiftly on, it's a week to the day as we record that the Brooklyn Nets fired Steve Nash, but we're still without a head coach. During the week, Mark Stein has said that there's pushback from the league towards the Nets for thinking about signing Ime Udoka as head coach. In a tweet, Stein says, league sources say there have been some strong voices urging Joe Tsai to back off the Nets' intent to hire suspended Celtics coach Ime Udoka as Steve Nash's successor, given the considerable turmoil Brooklyn has already faced this season. Nets Daily has confirmed that in the Stein tweet that the strong voices mentioned were coming from the league, the commissioner's office, with pushback also coming from Nets internal staff, BSE global staff, which is obviously the Nets parent company, and the NBA. I'm thinking this is probably, and obviously I think Sean Marks also said like a week ago that it was like, it's when a reporter was like, it's Ime Udoka, right? And he was like, well, we've not made any strong decisions, but it was pretty cut and dry that Udoka was the one they wanted. We know that he's a favorite of Sean Marks. We know he's a favorite of KD. But yeah, just nothing's happened. I kind of floated out there that maybe they leaked we're thinking about hiring Ime to the media to kind of gauge public opinion and be like, what about if we did this? But obviously that's been pushed back, not only with sort of female employees of the Brooklyn Nets and the league, and male employees of the Nets and the league, but it's so weird. It's one of those where because we don't have all the info, it's very strange. The way I see it, I think I want to get your take on my take a bit, sort of weirdly, like, because we don't know the details. If Ime Udoka obviously had a consensual, albeit inappropriate, workplace relationship with someone who I think was married to someone else in the franchise, and that's why he was dismissed. If it's basically all consensual but inappropriate, and you shouldn't really have got together with someone you work with, I think that's forgivable, and the Nets can sign him, and I get behind that. But if it's like he was sort of harassing the woman and all that kind of stuff and using his position of power to influence a relationship and put that forward, I think that's where I'm out. I've chucked a lot at you there, but what do you think of? Do you think the Nets should just hire Udoka anyway, regardless of what's going on with the Celtics?
Yeah, it's a horrible predicament. And I think as well as like you look at it like if none of this was happening and Udoka was available, he's the perfect appointment. And I think if you look at it like that, then yeah, they probably should bring him in. And I think, as you say, if it was just a consensual, inappropriate relationship, but inappropriate because it was with, obviously, we know it was with a Celtics employee who was with another Celtic. I can't remember what it was, but it's someone else related to the organisation. Then yeah, I think, I don't know if it's forgivable. I mean, an affair is never really forgivable, but it's forgivable enough in the sense that he's still allowed to work and do a job for someone. I'm sure there's people who are having affairs that get hired every day, but I think you just have to trust KD and Sean Marks the most out of anyone in the organisation at the moment. And if that's their guy, and I think, obviously, we said last week, I went out and I said, I think this is going to be done within 48 hours. I thought it was going to be done by the time the podcast came out in the morning. It just felt like it was moving so quickly. And you do think that the only thing that was really stopping it from coming out that quickly, despite the fact we were away to go on a road trip for 4 or 5 games, the only thing really stopping it was them doing checks and whatever, because the Celtics just said, go for it. Just
have him.
Have him. We don't want anything to do with him. And which really meant if he was their guy, and by all means, it sounds like he is their guy. I mean, from what I've heard, Quinn Snyder, who you would put as one of the top candidates as a fantastic coach who isn't at a job, they didn't really seem to give him the time of day. I don't know if that was on his part as well, or, I mean, you would at least think that there would be a bit of conversation there, but it seemed that they were so in on getting Udoka and that they didn't even take that into consideration. Totally understand the pushback. It's just not a good situation. They may decide after doing their background checks that it's not worth it. But we just need a fresh approach. And if it is Udoka or if it is someone else, I just personally think it can't be an internal hire. Things won't change enough, and we just need freshness. And I think we've seen it in the last few games. We need a fresh start, and we need to basically get away from all this, and potentially good basketball could be exactly what we need. But yeah, the delay is slightly worrying me a wee bit. I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, it feels, I feel like they were probably about to pull the trigger on Ime and then got a backlash, and then they're just shitting themselves because I think it's, again, tied to their kind of reputation being so in the mud now as an organization. It's just another misstep. Although saying that, there are other head coaches in the league that have done a lot worse and are still working in this league. Including the Dallas Mavericks head coach, Jason Kidd. He's still at Dallas, J Kidd, and he's done some horrible shit in his time, and he's still getting about the league and is still, lauded as one of the best players and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, it's a tricky one. I think the Nets are just being cautious, but yeah, I don't think now is the time for caution. We can't really know until all the stuff comes out. But as you said last week, I'm sure as soon as Udoka does get announced as Nets head coach, it'll all come out and it will be like the world's worst bloke. So we've got that to look forward to. But yeah, it remains to be seen. But fortunately, it's time to talk about some basketball, which we haven't done in over an episode. We didn't talk about any basketball last week. But this past week, your Brooklyn Nets absolutely blew the back doors off the Washington Wizards, winning by 42 points, winning on the road 128 to 86. KD leading the charge on 28 points. 6 of 6 from the line, 2 of 6 from free, 10 of 21 shooting, 11 assists and 9 rebounds as well. So he was a rebound off a triple-double. I think he had the only ever poster that was just on like a fadeaway corner elbow jumper as well, because he left. Daniel Gafford was just in an absolute heap on the floor after KD crossed him over, which was pretty funny. Some real nice production off the bench. We shot decent from free. What of the many things to like about that Washington game do you want to talk about first, Adam?
It was just an enjoyable game of basketball, and I think that's the best thing about this game. It felt like it was just needed in so many ways, and it was just nice to see everyone contributing, everyone showing energy, everyone looking like they wanted to play for each other, everyone looking happy for each other. Just extremely impressed with the guys that came in. Obviously, we're struggling at the moment in terms of who's playing and who's not, and who's healthy and who's not, who's playing and healthy and who's playing and not healthy. I mean, there's plenty of them, but just extremely impressed with guys like Thomas, Watanabe, David Duke Jr. I mean, coming in like that was just refreshing. And obviously these guys are fighting for the place in the team, and they've definitely all made an argument in the last week, which is great to see. It's always nice to have these guys. It's despite guys coming back that they're going to be fighting for place, because it just makes everyone better. But yeah, obviously you mentioned Kevin Durant. He's just outstanding, and mentioning those guys like Thomas and Duke Jr., you can just tell he loves playing with these young guys, these young ballers. It almost looks like, despite the fact he's still one of the best basketball players in the world, it does it kind of rejuvenates him in a way. He looks like that excited young Kevin Durant that we saw in OKC all those years ago. And you could tell he just kind of gave it an extra bit, obviously being back home. I think a lot of his friends were just behind the Nets bench. You could see him interacting with them like at the end of the half. And it was just amazing. As you said, that crossover on Gafford was up there with probably one of the best highlights we've seen from him as a Net. And it just brought a feel-good factor. And it was nice seeing him smiling at the end of the game and being happy, because despite everything that's going on, and obviously everything that went on this summer, you just want to know that Kevin Durant is enjoying his basketball, and he always will. But he looked like he was just in good spirits, and obviously we're in a kind of constant storm of the Nets, and he just always seems to be the calm in the middle of it when we're playing basketball, and it's probably one of the sole reasons why you don't give up on this team when you see Kevin Durant playing like that.
Yeah, it reminded me of that game from last year where it was KD and the kids against Toronto, where I think we had 8 healthy players. Everyone was either COVID out or vaccinated out or whatever. And I think if one player, like I think KD was sort of day to day or something with something else, and if he was going to sit, we basically forfeit the game. And he was like, "No, let's go to Toronto." And they beat the Raptors, and it felt like a really big win and a massive moment. And KD having fun, like you say, and having a sort of, we know he's taking Cam Thomas under his wing, but having a lot and having sort of belief in these players that he's playing with, like it was, and it showed, because we finally got some nice production off the bench. There was like a 15-0 run at the end of that first quarter, and it was like Cam Thomas, Markieff Morris, and Patty Mills alongside KD and Joe Harris, and yeah, it looked like it paid off. Obviously, there's been a social media movement across the last week or so, #FreeCT, regarding Cam Thomas, and it seemed to work. He went, after having 15 total minutes so far this year and somewhat being buried when Steve Nash was choosing the rotations. Obviously, Jack Vaughan's had him straight in. He played 32 minutes in this game, scoring 17 points, of 6 of 13 shooting, 2 of 4 from 3 of 3 from the line, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, a steal, and a plus 36 on the box score. Is now the time? Is Cam Thomas the guy that the Nets need, especially with obviously Kyrie not being around? Free CT Ollie Khan in the chat, thanks mate. Free CT, is now the time? Does Cam Thomas need minutes?
Yeah, 100%. And I've been harsh on Cam Thomas, and like I think it's just because we brought in quite a bit of talent over the summer, that I've probably forgotten how good he actually was. And he is a great player, and he's only going to get better. It's easy to forget that he only turned 21 last month, and obviously when you see these things that he does on social media, you do remember how young he actually is, because it's not something that you see vets kind of do. But well, to be fair, they do. They're all big kids at times. But I mean, yeah, he definitely deserves minutes. And I think as well now is obviously Nash didn't play him, and when he was getting asked about it, he was saying that he needs someone to come off the bench and create as well. And we've seen Cam doing that. He's definitely improved his game in terms of passing and assisting and knowing when to make that pass. We saw so many times last year where he kind of waved off KD and took his own shot. And you've got to be a brave man to do that to the best scorer on the planet. But he
loves that though. I bet he loves it. He's go on, son.
He loves him. He probably sees a lot of himself when he was younger. But yeah, it's just his ability to get to the line as well is enough to make sure he's in the rotation. Like you look at some of his free throw numbers, like in the last week, it's just incredible. It's star numbers almost. He gets his calls. He knows how to get calls. And I think while Curry's down, and even when he's back, having that guy off the bench that's able to create his own shot and score when he doesn't need the rhythm of the rest of the team. He goes to the beat of his own drum, very similar to Kevin Durant. It's so important off the bench, and he could easily start on this team, but it's so good to have an option like that off the bench. And right now, he's probably the 6th man on this team currently, and could be going forward.
Yeah, I know, that's a great shout. I'm here for Cam Thomas, the 6th man of the year. Exactly what you say. He's just not scared. He's just completely unfazed by anything. He hasn't played at all in ages, and he just waltzes in and goes, "All right, give me the ball, and I'll show you what I can do." And I love it, and I think everyone loves it. And I think we've been in this kind of weird spot where it's been all win now, and I think people think that you can't develop young players and give them shots while you're in that mode. But I think when you've got someone as productive as Cam Thomas at, creating his own shot and all that kind of stuff, I think you have to play him. And he's making a very, very good case for him to continue to get minutes. And I think, he's absolutely justified in that. Big shout out to Yuta Wanatabe as well. played 24 minutes, 6 of 8 from the field, going 2 of 3 from free, 8 rebounds as well, 2 blocks. So he's just all heart, and he's just like a sweet man who just plays basketball and just cares, it looks like, and yeah, just incredibly good. So I love that as well. Like you say, nice to see David Duke Jr. Get some run as well. Daron Sharp is, I think, the only one that's kind of getting left in the lurch, I think, out of the kind of next generation. But with Nick Claxton playing like he's playing, we don't need a backup center. He's playing absolutely out of his mind. 9 of 10 from the field, 9 rebounds and an assist, 18 points on the night, 3 blocks, only 2 fouls. He's just insane. And it's the one year that I was like, you know what? I think I'm out on Nick Claxton. And he's just absolutely proven me wrong. Just been an absolute beast. I know. He obviously listens. He obviously listens back. But this was the first night of a back-to-back. Then we took the win. And then it was on to Charlotte, where it was a bit of touch and go, but we also got the win. So the Nets would win the close one, 98-94. And it was kind of much of the same. It was a harder task, but KD leading the way. Cam Thomas also looking mint. It was kind of, KD almost looked like he ran out of gas. And then he kind of sat the fourth a bit, and then the Hornets went on like a 10-0 run. And KD was like, all right, put his shoes back on almost. And then it was like 21-7 Nets, and we get the dub. Just picking up from what I was saying on Nick Claxton, he finished this one with 11 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 blocks and 2 steals. So he's an absolute force on the defensive end, but he also leads the league in shooting percentage at 72.7%. And he's also second in the league in blocks and first in the league in dunks. So yeah, Nick Claxton is also having an absolute game of his life recently. Any takeaways from this one?
Yeah, I mean, just going on from Claxton, I think it's just so good to see the team playing well defensively again. It's something that's been brought up. Obviously, we invested so much over the summer defensively to bring in guys and to improve defensively, because obviously last season it was such a massive issue. And bringing in guys like Royce O'Neal, they were obviously trying to solidify a better defensive mentality, and I think it starts with Nick Claxton. I think he's really improved defensively again, which was always a strong point of him. Obviously, we knew that he could guard 1 to 5, but he has improved his game. Obviously, you saw 3 blocks, 2 steals. He's just making the most of that kind of long, lanky frame, which we obviously saw a lot of when we had Jarrett Allen. So it's nice to see that kind of rim protection from Nick Claxton, which we potentially haven't seen as much of, even though he has always had that there. It's certainly kind of taken that leap there. But I think this whole kind of defensive increase has came from these young guys coming into the team. It's the burst of energy that I was talking about earlier. KD in this one, again, a very good defensive performance, which we saw from him. Always seems to benefit from having good defense around him. Gives him that extra boost defensively. He had 3 blocks as well in this one, which is crazy. 3 blocks from him, 4 from Clax. Yeah, they really kind of got their rim protection down in this one. But just in general, there was just a good energy defensively. Obviously, probably the first time we've held a team under 100 points 2 games in a row in a while, and 2 wins. And yeah, we always know that we're going to be good offensively. When you've got Kevin Durant, you've got other guys who are so good at 3-point shooting, you're always going to get the points there. But we always seem to just let ourselves down defensively. And I hope when we bring in a new head coach that's something that they really pride themselves on, because we've seen it. They've got the ability to be good defensively. It's just making sure that they put in that effort, because up until this week, it's just not been there. And it was refreshing to see them just put that extra bit of effort in, and that's everyone. That goes straight down to guys like Cam Thomas and Sumner, who aren't traditionally good defenders, but you did see that they do put in that effort. And if you're not a good defender, if you're putting in that effort, at least kind of brings you back up on a level playing field.
I think so. Yeah, it's just that I think it's probably the difference of like the starters probably being on average probably somewhere between 10 and 15 years younger than they were last year, when you've got like Andre Drummond and, you know, LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin and those kind of guys trying to battle for minutes. And I think, you know, as good as those guys were in spurts, it's just not something you can rely on. So you get these young hungry players who want to come in and make an impact. And yeah, you don't have to be good as, you know, playing hard will sort of paste over anything that, you know, any deficiencies that you have. And I think it's, you know, Clax plays with that kind of that fire, and you can tell it after he dunks, after he blocks, he's flexing and all this kind of stuff that you love to see. So yeah, having a bit more of a defensive identity is something that is just incredibly fun to watch and incredibly good. Talking of defense and holding teams under 100 points, it was, actually, before we move on, I just want to ask a question. So 2 wins back to back on the road, both without Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons. What should we take away from the fact that we look like we're at our best without Kyrie and Ben Simmons?
Obviously, it's a relatively small sample size looking at it's very small. I mean, we've known for a while that the system of Kevin Durant and role players around him is always going to be successful. Long term, probably not. I mean, teams always seem to have an answer for it eventually, which we'll obviously get onto in the next game. But obviously, it's a new system bringing Ben Simmons in, something completely different, which we've not been used to for a while. Say having someone like James Harden prior to that was very different, and then not having someone like that at all was very different as well. So, and obviously he's still so far away from the player that he once was. And I make it sound like he's completely past it. He's obviously not. He's still a very young guy, but I don't think we can look at it and make Ben Simmons look too bad at the moment. We can't give up on him this early. I think he needs to play. He needs to start. We just need to gel. If we lose another kind of 5 out of the next 8 games or whatever, I'd rather they manage to figure out playing with each other and eventually kind of got it together. In terms of Kyrie, I think, except kind of for one game, he's been playing well. I mean, obviously there was that one game where he just played absolutely awful. Maybe a couple of games where he's not played too well. But his game just doesn't translate to winning as well as someone like Kevin Durant. We've seen that obviously previously when it has just been Kyrie by himself and KD's been out. Everything kind of really needs to be clicking elsewhere for Kyrie's game to be so effective, which it has been, and he'll always score. But it's nowhere kind of near enough by itself. So obviously we just need to wait and see if he's going to come back in. But again, like Simmons coming back in, we just kind of need to make it work. It's got to work. It's not as if we can't play these guys if they're available and they're obviously meant to be playing. These are 2 fantastic basketball players, and again, it's just going to take a bit of time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm all in on giving Simmons time. There's a lot of people saying, you know, he's cooked, he's washed, he's not the player he was. It's just like, mate, he's like 10 games back from a year out and back surgery. Just chill out. Joe Harris doesn't look up to speed either, but I think, you know, there's just more of a microscope on Ben Simmons. So we'll see. I'm not out on him yet. But we did see him back. Wasn't his finest performance. We saw him back on a close fought loss to the Dallas Mavericks, losing by 2, losing 94-96 at the death. But it's one of them. No losses are good, but you know, our defense looked really good again. We moved the ball a lot, but it was a close loss. It was weird that I think Ben Simmons made an appearance on the road. Like, we're in the middle of this road trip, and he just sort of flies out and goes, "No, I'm all right now," and then we'll get him come back, play 16 minutes. Have go 1 of 3, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and 2 points in 16 minutes. So not great. And he said that he was really bad. But as the last games that we sort of mentioned, KD continued his streak of 25 plus points to start the season and became the first player since Allen Iverson and only the 7th player all time to drop 25 or more points in the first 11 games. So history being made. But yeah, a close one. But I think it's just Luka is just incredibly good, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just outstanding. Obviously, shout out to Kevin Durant. I only saw like a few minutes ago that he got Player of the Week as well, which is always nice to see. But yeah, I mean, cards on the table. I've not actually watched this full game yet. It's like, obviously it's been a busy few days, and those 3 tips just sometimes get the better of you at times. And from what I have seen and from what I've watched, obviously it's probably the first defeat of the season where we can hold our heads relatively high. We don't need to be too embarrassed. We were really the walking wounded going into last night. I was as surprised as you to see Ben Simmons actually played. I didn't think they needed to do that, but if they feel that they just want him to play as many games as possible to get out of this kind of, obviously he needs to get healthy, but he isn't just a bad run of form at the moment. And needs to get his confidence up. So it's an extra game towards that, I guess. Obviously, Watanabe had an ankle injury, which probably had everyone's heart in their mouths, considering how well he's been playing and how important he's been. It looks like it's only going to be a sprain, and he should be back relatively quickly. It would have been just awful for him to be out for a long time after playing so well. And there's no one on this team that deserves an injury less than Watanabe right now. But hopefully he'll be back relatively soon. But as I say, the third game now on the bounce where we've held our opponents under 100 points. We looked good defensively from what I've seen, but the Mavs just being a good team, and Luka Doncic just being an absolute baller when we are so walking wounded. Probably on another day, 2 months, 3 months down the line, we would have won that game. But for now, 2-1 in the last 3, no head coach, walking wounded. I think we can be relatively happy with that one.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just seen today that Chris Mulholland has confirmed that Watanabe will not play against the Knicks. So he's out for that. It is a left ankle sprain, but he should be all good. But yeah, again, nice. Royce O'Neal, 8 assists was really good. Nick Claxton, 14 rebounds. So there's just loads of stuff to point to that is just really promising. Cam Thomas getting another 30 minutes of playing time, 19 points. Seth Curry, 1 point. 0 of 1 from 3. Just got 1 at the free throw line. Did get a steal. So yeah, it feels like a little bit like there are steps forward, and then we just kind of step on a rake like in The Simpsons and just smashes him in the face. But it's steps forward nonetheless, and we shall see. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one against the Knicks tomorrow, and I'm not sure I'm ready for us losing that one potentially. But we shall see. We'll wait for that one, and we'll react to it rather than preempt what's going to happen. We're going to go on to some listener questions now, and I think some of these we've kind of covered. This came in from Frio saying, "Do you think we should blow it up, or have recent results made you think it can work?"
No, I think I mentioned earlier, I don't think we can blow it up right now, and I think it probably would be a bit reactionary, a bit counterproductive for the Nets to just lose their mind this early on in the season. There's an argument there for sure. I mean, when everything's going this badly, it may seem like they have no choice, but they do. And I think even though right now we don't look like title contenders, the crazy thing about the NBA is in a couple of weeks' time we could be, and that just it's always just been a case with the Nets that dominoes can fall, and it just depends the way they fall as to how this team can look, and it can all change so quickly. We could be looking at a new talented coach, a much healthier team, hopefully much less drama. I mean, I don't know how much less drama we can get, but you know what it's like. If that can happen, the last 6 months can be quickly forgotten about. And I just think the lack of picks we have, the likelihood that we get absolutely fleeced for our star players, well, this far away from the trade deadline, there just really isn't a benefit of it. And if there are Nets fans out there that are wanting to blow it up, I just think you need to look around the rest of the league right now. I mean, you look in Los Angeles. I mean, the Lakers are one of the worst teams in the league right now. I mean, the Clippers are, who were potentially one of the favourites to win it all. Looks like Kawhi is having some real trouble getting back. I mean, we think Ben Simmons is having trouble getting back. Kawhi is really struggling. So, especially just kind of taking so many games off. He's still a fantastic player, but just look at the Celtics last year. They were in a similar situation like us at the start of the year, and they ended up going to the finals. So it can change so quickly, and I think we just need to catch our breath, and hopefully we're in a better position a few weeks to a month's time.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the same record as the Warriors right now. We've got the same record as the Heat right now, and no one's telling them to blow it up. Do you know what I mean? So I think we're somewhere between 10 and 15% of the way through the season. So I think it's time to pump the brakes on blowing it up. There's plenty to be happy about. And like you say, I don't think like mathematically and with the contracts and stuff that we have committed to, and so there's just no good sense in blowing it up. And you got to keep the faith, Theo. Keep the faith. Next question. Has Joe Tsai's overall tenure as Nets owner been one of success or failure? Is he holding us back? For example, do you think he had any hand in the roster changes that would have seen him financially impacted by luxury tax? For example, Jarrett Allen being traded, Dinwiddie not being extended, Kyrie given a new contract. I have to think that overall Joe Tsai's tenure has been one of failure to live up to external expectations. One of the most sort of expensive rosters ever created, and the biggest luxury tax bill, probably one of the biggest luxury tax bills ever. And in the last 3 years, we've won one playoff series. So, there's no win there. Look at the I know COVID, I know mandates, I know trade requests, I know all this kind of stuff, but I think that sort of Joe Tsai has had a pretty big hand in a lot of that and how that's affected his team. What do you think? We kind of touched on Joe already, but
yeah, I mean, I can see what Tyler's getting at there in terms of there's kind of been a bit of a Tsai's had a bit of a reputation around kind of certain people in the Nets fan base that he's been cheap at times. Obviously with Dinwiddie and trading Allen before he could be extended, but I mean, I think we've seen that he's willing to spend money, as you said there. I mean, one of the most expensive teams of all time. So I think it's way deeper than what he's willing to pay. I mean, it's so easy. I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Like you look at decisions that he's made, obviously with the Harden trade, and I think you could probably make the argument that any GM in the league at the time, if James Harden was wanting to come to their team and they had those pieces, would have made that decision. Kyrie, he just didn't play basketball. Like, why would you want to extend him at that time? There was no argument for that. We didn't know if extending him would be a massive disaster. Who knew what those mandates were going to look like? And Dinwiddie, obviously, he inevitably tore his ACL, but we had 2 point guards at the time in Harden and Irving on max contracts. Like, how much money do you want to guarantee to that position? It's so difficult. And I think you're right. In general, it has been a failure because he hasn't won a championship, and he spent all this money and had all these great players, but you're bang on in the fact that whatever could have gone wrong did go wrong. So you can blame Sai for certain things, but he's not a cheapskate. He has pushed it all out there. He's got his flaws, some massive flaws, but he has tried to win a championship at the end of the day, and I don't think you can blame him for that.
He's swung for the fences, and I think not extending Kyrie has looked like a lovely bit of business at the moment.
Yeah.
You're not going to guarantee, I don't think anyone's going to pick him up. So it's a good thing not to be on that money. Carl G says, coaching options. What makes Udoka the right choice or not based on his coaching record alone? Who else do you think stands out as an alternative options out there? I think we kind of touched on this earlier. He holds people accountable, which I think, both are kind of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown of the Celtics kind of said was great. He calls his own players dickheads. He's incredibly defensively focused. And KD, he gets the co-sign from KD. I don't really think there are any as good options out there if we are just talking about coaching. But yeah, I think we touched on that, unless you've got anything else on there.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. I think as well, obviously we saw he's very good at organising, being effective on star players. Like we saw obviously KD last year. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a team that's managed KD as well as the Celtics last year in the playoff series, and obviously Giannis as well. So yeah, he's just very, very well organised, and we've not had that in a while.
Yeah, even sort of when Ben Simmons had his like all NBA season, Udoka was at the Sixers. So he gets the best out of star players, which is really good. And final question here from Elliot from Ruben and Luton. You can add one former player to the existing roster. Who has the biggest impact?
Let's go for. We've kind of had similar questions previously, and it's so easy to go for your classics like J Kidd, Vince Carter, Brook Lopez. But I saw the question while we're doing the podcast, and I'm going to go for someone a bit different. I'm going to go for DeMare Carroll. And that's a bit of a random one, but it's just someone that I loved as a net. And I think he's just an excellent vet leader. And obviously he said, who is the biggest impact? And we just need someone like that right now to, as you said about Udoka, just someone to hold the team accountable. He left everything on the floor and was just a great example for that young Nets team. And someone like that who can just come in, plug him in, and he's just a good vet. Is someone that I think would benefit the team. What about you?
Along the same lines, give me Jared Dudley back on this team, or just go back and give me the tag team of Theo Pinson and Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. Just vibes, just for absolute vibes. Or I know he kind of developed this talent after he left the Nets, but give me Brook Lopez. A big stretch five that can shoot the ball, clear out some of that. Stretch the floor a little bit, open up that lane. There's plenty of people, but I'll go Brookie. I'll go Brookie the Wookie. Nice. If you're going for DeMare Carroll. But yeah, that's about all we got time for. Thanks for everyone for jumping in the chat. Chat's been nice and busy today. Thanks for all the listening to questions, and thanks to the Nets for actually winning some basketball games. It's nice to talk about some success on the court for once. But that's all we've got time for today. We'll see you next time. Thanks very much for listening.